This is Mason Weaver. Today I was called an Uncle Tom. Now, you know, at 71, and it's been in two-thirds of my life as a conservative Republican, as a supporter of President Donald Trump, and have ties deep into the black community. You could imagine I've been called that before. I've been called sellout, Uncle Tom, handkerchief head, Europeanized black person. But it's funny. It was funny, but it's sad because it represents the real problem with black people. We have gone back on the plantation. We've allowed master to tell us our culture. See, on the plantation, master controls the culture. That's why we don't really have a black culture. We have a slave culture. Our habits were given to us by master. Our belief systems were given to us by master. Our moral values were given to us by master. Different cultures, different people develop their cultures by interacting with each other, conquering each other, and being conquered by each other, trading with each other the foods and the spices, and they became a culture. The German culture dealing with the French culture dealing with the English, and it became a culture. Black folks never had a black nation in America. We didn't develop our own language, our own culture. On that plantation, master's culture was our culture. So black people developed things to survive. Secret languages we call good, bad. That's a bad culture got on there, man. We do that to keep ourselves secret from each other and master, and not collectively. So right now today, we send our kids to slave training camps called public schools, where master controls them. Every ghetto in America is controlled by Democrats, the party of slavery. Our kids are taught to be degrading in our language, bitch and hoes and dogs and gang members and shooting. That's what we're entertaining. You look at any black publication, you look at Black Enterprises, who is dedicated to black business. You open a Black Enterprise book or Ebony book or a Jet magazine, and you see nothing but ads, big pictures, and small captions, because we're not taught to read, we're not taught to investigate, we're not taught to analyze, we're taught what to think. So when they came out and called us in the 60s Uncle Tom, nobody reads Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's where it came from. You know, by 1960s, Uncle Tom became the choice insult for any black man or woman, mostly men, who accused of betraying the race. Malcolm X called Martin Luther King an Uncle Tom. Stokely Carmichael called Roy Wilkins, NAACP, Uncle Tom. Muhammad Ali called at least 3 black opponents Uncle Tom. That became the negative slang because nobody would dare read. They knew you wouldn't read. Folks, they knew you would not read because you were taught not to read. No one wants an educated slave. The Democrats made it illegal for you to read on that plantation. It was illegal. Frederick Douglass, his wife, the wife of his slave master was teaching him to read like you would a dog to sit, and thought it was funny and cute. And the master said, if you teach that slave, he didn't say slave, teach that nigger to read, he'd be no good for himself or for us. And Frederick Douglass heard him say that as a young child, heard him say that. If you teach him to read, he'll want freedom. And Frederick Douglass said to himself, you mean reading will lead me to freedom? So he started playing, because when they played with the white kids as they were young, to keep them all together. So he started tricking the young kids into teaching them to read. You don't know how to write an A. Show me how to write an A. You don't know how to write no A. And he learned to read, and guess what he found? You read his autobiography. He will tell you, he learned to read, he became free. My cohort, Eddie Cage, you see him on Facebook a lot. 6'3", 300-pound massive man who ain't afraid of nothing at all. He said he was a slave until he learned how to read. He was a high school graduate, not unable to read. He was broken spirit and broken heart and broken financially until he learned how to read. And he saw these white people running around, see his same age with suits and ties on. He said, boy, if I learn how to read, I'm going to be free. Guess what? He taught himself to read, and he was free. You send your kids to these inner city gang prep schools, and they can read and research and reason by themselves, and they can tell you to call me an Uncle Tom without even knowing who Uncle Tom was. I'm not mad at you. I really do love you. So I'm going to spend a little time explaining to you who Uncle Tom was and why I'm proud to be Uncle Tom. See, Uncle Tom was written by Minister Harriet Beecher Stowe, an abolitionist, a woman who fought. By the way, she was a minister. She was a Christian, and she fought to end slavery. She fought to abolish slavery, your ancestors, from captivity. And she wrote this book to explain the cruelty of slavery. I'm going to put in my description some of the links to these places that you can at least go and look at and read yourself. Just a few paragraphs, not long. I don't want you to read the whole book. I know how troubling that is for us. I know. But you read Uncle Tom's Cabin, you know who Uncle Tom was and why I'm proud to be called an Uncle Tom. I am an Uncle Tom. You see, Uncle Tom was the most loyal Christian on that plantation. Uncle Tom loved God enough to die to do God's will. Uncle Tom was beaten to death because he refused to tell where the escaped slaves were to Master. And Master beat him to death, and his silence freed those people. Uncle Tom, the Master is telling you the opposite, that Uncle Tom helped those slaves on the plantation. Uncle Tom, the Uncle Tom now is portrayed as someone who hates black people. He died. Read the doggone book. Uncle Tom died to save those black people. He was the best Christian on that plantation. His martyrdom, his death, led others to Christ. And we have allowed the Master to change that hero into a villain. We have allowed him in front of us to change the hero of who Uncle Tom was. How dare us do that to that memory? I found a very good synopsis of that book online. I'm going to read part of it to you because it's really, really, really tragic to understand what was going on here. But it's sad that we have gotten to the point that we have let others tell us. I mean, they got us call ourselves dogs, and our women are bitches and hoes, and we brag about the prostitute of the year and the pimp of the year. It's a shame. So here's the story. George Trevor returned to the Kentucky farm where, after his father's death, he set free all the slaves in honor of Tom's memory. He urged them to think of Tom's sacrifice every time they looked at his cabin, and to lead a pious Christian life, just as Tom did. That's, folks. Around this time, with the help of Tom Locker, now a changed man after being healed by the Quakers, George, Eliza, and Harry are last to cross over to the cabin, to Canada, to be free. And they talk about how when they got to the point that they were going to beat him. Here's the problem, folks. Here's Uncle Tom. When Tom refused to tell Legree where Cassie and Emmeline had gone, Legree orders his overseers to beat him. And when Tom was near death, he forgave Legree and the overseers. George Shelby arrived with money in hand to buy Tom's freedom, but he was too late. He could only watch as Tom dies a martyr's death. Taking a boat to freedom, Chassia and Emmeline met George Harris' sister, and they traveled into Canada. How many of you are willing to die to let someone escape slavery? I mean, it's an insult, but I understand why you do it. Uncle Tom was a hero. Uncle Tom saved black folks. Uncle Tom got black folks to freedom. Now the book itself, Uncle Tom's Cabin, was the biggest selling book in America. It changed the hearts and the focus of the North. It changed the focus of the South. Uncle Tom's Cabin, folks, pricked the conscience of America to the point that 30 years later, black folks were free. Uncle Tom's Cabin, from a hero named Uncle Tom. So I know you black folks think that you're calling me a little cute little name to hurt my feelings. I am proud. Because I forgave a white boy that tried to kill me. I forgave a white boy that dropped 2,800 pounds of steel on me because I was a black man, trying to take my life. I looked him in the eye when he did it. And I was full of anger and hatred and rage. I'm disabled to this day because of this fool. But once I forgave him, once I learned enough about God to know I had to forgive him, then God healed me. And God gave me a mission. And God's been in charge of my life ever since then. And I've been free ever since then. So black man, black woman, I understand. I understand. But your hatred to me is not going to free you. What's going to free you is you recognizing first you need a savior. You need to be free. You have to recognize that first. And then go toward the light. And you must forgive the anger, the frustration, the hatred you have for me and other folks. And then you find out who's really lying to you. You got to forgive that also. Black people, you cannot be free until you forgive. I'm talking about black women with issues with black men with issues with black women, black folks who don't think they can get a job, black people stuck in the ghetto selling dope, black gang members, the Bloods and Crips. What would happen if the Bloods and Crips forgave each other? Master would be frightened to death. Master would be frightened to death if you black parents stop sending your kids to these gang prep schools knowing they're only going to learn how to be good gang members and good slaves. Forgive and move on. Forgive, accept God's mercy, pray to God that you have forgiven, and then go stand up and take your rightful place behind Uncle Tom and sacrifice for your next generation and develop a real culture, a black culture, not given you by Master. We have a long way to go. We've been too many decades in these government industry schools. Democrats control every ghetto in America, and I know the pain. But you throwing bricks at me and other black conservatives will not free your behind. It will not free your behind. Makes you feel better, call me Uncle Tom. Call me Handkerchief Head. No one's opinion of me means more to me than my opinion of me. I can't give you a job. I can't get your kids out of jail. It doesn't matter if you hate me or love me, but love yourself enough to at least acknowledge I may be telling the truth. I may be telling the truth. You spend 5 minutes online, Google Uncle Tom's Cabin. Read the doggone book or half the book. Know what you're singing. We're here to free slaves. Join us. If you got enough nerves, join us. LeaveThePlantation.org. It's okay. We don't hate you. We love you. Join us and let's go to freedom together. If we show up, Master must back away. He's afraid that you and I will become friends, that you and I will become allies. He's terrified that you and I realize we're the same people. I don't hate you. I love you. Stay right or be left. Eternity is a long time to be wrong.